What unsolved mystery has absolutely no plausible explanation? Story 1. Personal Mystery. More than 20 years ago, I briefly worked selling gas services door to door. Side note, am terrible at selling things I don't really believe in. As dusk started settling around 5 p.m., I knocked on a door and an elderly woman answered. I gave her my usual pitch about saving money by switching to gas and asked if we could compare her bills. She said, "I'm sorry, sweetheart, I don't live here. This is my son's house. Let me get him," and I politely agreed. After waiting 5 to 10 minutes, I figured they'd forgotten about me or were trying to avoid the whole thing, so I knocked again. This time, a man in his mid-40s opened the door and asked how he could help. I started the same speech, and he cut me off halfway, saying, "This isn't a good time. We buried my mother today." I apologized and backed away immediately. I still tell myself he was just messing with the door-to-door guy, but honestly, I really don't know. Story 2. When I was a teenager, I performed a magic trick in front of about 20 people. There were 2 of us working together behind the scenes. The trick went like this. I'd pick someone from the crowd to choose a card and hold it above their head so everyone could see it, but with the back facing me. Behind the audience, on the other side of a window, my partner could also see the card. Since everyone faced forward, they couldn't see him. He would stick the matching card from another deck onto the outside of the window. Once he gave me the signal, it'd throw the entire deck at the glass, and suddenly their chosen card would appear stuck on the other side. But what happened shocked both the audience and us. I threw the deck, and not only was the correct card stuck on the outside of the window, it was also stuck on our side of the window, right next to it. I have no explanation for how that happened. We played it off like it was intentional, but nobody watching had any idea what kind of strange magic just occurred. Story 3. Around 2 years ago, my sister was home alone while my mom was at work and I was at school. I got out early that day and arrived home around 1 p.m. I was talking to my sister and she casually mentioned that our mom had come home for a bit. That immediately seemed odd because my mom works several towns away, and even if she came home on her break, she'd have had to leave almost immediately. Still, I thought maybe she had some appointment, so I asked what she said. This is what my sister told me. She was upstairs in her room when she heard the front door unlock. She walked to the top of the stairs where you can clearly see the door and saw our mom walk in, take off her coat and hang it up. She looked up at my sister without saying a word. My sister assumed everything was normal and went back to her room. She never heard her leave. When she told me, I got chills. My mom would never walk in without saying something at the very least, "Hi." I immediately called her to check, and just as I suspected, she hadn't been home since early that morning. We still have no explanation for what my sister saw, but I was nervous being home alone for the next 2 weeks. Story 4. 2 days before the Challenger disaster, I had a dream that I was at the launch. The shuttle lifted off, clipped the gantry, and veered sideways. I could hear the astronauts screaming. 2 days later, while I was getting a haircut at home, my daughter came in to tell me what had just happened on TV. It gave me chills. I know it was just a coincidence, but it felt deeply unsettling. What makes it even stranger is that I never would have been at the launch. I live in the UK, and the idea of traveling to see a shuttle take off was completely unrealistic at the time. Story 5. One day I was late for an appointment and speeding up a hill with a sharp right-hand curve. The second I rounded the bend, I saw an accident blocking both lanes. It must have just happened only 1 or 2 cars were stuck behind it and no emergency vehicles were there yet. To my right was a sidewalk full of people watching, and to my left was oncoming traffic, so I had no way around it. I was also going too fast to stop in time. I knew that relaxing your body helps reduce injury, so I closed my eyes for a moment and let myself go limp. And then absolutely nothing happened. When I opened my eyes, the crash was behind me in my rearview mirror, and I was driving forward on a clear road like nothing had been in my way at all. This was about 35 years ago, and I still have no explanation for how that happened. Story 6. We lived in a bi-level house with a chest freezer in the basement and the kitchen on the second floor. When I was younger, I was asked to bring tater tots upstairs so my mom could make a casserole. I went and grabbed them and came upstairs. When I got upstairs, the tater tots were no longer in my hands, and my mom asked where they were. I thought I'd just spaced out and forgot them. So I went back downstairs and they weren't in the freezer anymore. Searched literally every square inch or nook and cranny between the chest freezer and the kitchen, and they were not anywhere. They never ever turned up. To this day, my mom thinks I was playing a dumb prank on her. My most plausible explanation is that we live in a computer simulation and they got accidentally glitched out of it. Story 7. When I was 7 or 8, we had this neighbor who was a super nice old lady that would give us snacks and talk to us through her window. She was agoraphobic and never ever left the house. Her kids would come by every other day or so to check up on her, and everyone in the neighborhood knew them. One day, me and my friends were outside playing like always, when her son came to bring her groceries like always. He comes out and asks if we've talked to his mom, and we say we haven't seen her in a day or two. That sweet little old lady vanished from her house. Apparently no trace of her. The family was around a lot after that and obviously was freaking out. I moved away a few years later, but they never found out what happened. It wasn't till I was an adult that I realized how messed up that whole situation was. Story 8. In college, I ate breakfast with 3 friends. All have cereal with milk. One friend, K, also has a glass of milk. He's seated directly across from me. I watch him pick up the glass and drop it onto his lap. It disappears from my view as it strikes the table. Absolutely no reaction from him. We ask K if he's okay. K has no recollection of the glass of milk. We searched the immediate area and found no milk or glass anywhere. 3 of us remember the glass of milk. K has no recollection to this day. Story 9. A little late, but the story still makes me sleep with the lights on whenever I think of it. My sister and I were upstairs at my grandparents' house where we lived. We were playing some Disney princess game on our TV. All of a sudden, we hear a loud piece of glass shatter. It seriously sounded like someone dropped a chandelier. My uncle, who was visiting at the time, came sprinting up the stairs because he thought we were being assaulted. He checked in the next room that the sound came from and nothing had fallen. There were no glass shards anywhere. Kinda creeped him out as well. Story 10, kinda personal, and I'm a bit late, but here goes. While visiting Rome a few years back, the group I was with decided to tour the Vatican. One of our friends had a friend who was a brother studying to be a priest. He was going to get us past the tourist barriers for a closer look at everything while we participated in a small mass at one of the numerous altars. When we met up with this fellow, he immediately struck me as someone that I had met before, almost someone that I had a good friendship with, but couldn't explain where or why I had known him. I didn't mention anything as I was too busy hiding the pocket knife that I'd accidentally left in my bag before trying to get into the basilica. The tour was interesting and the mass was a unique experience, but the whole time this feeling like I knew the man was haunting me. He invited us out to a coffee shop afterwards, and I took the time to retrieve the pocket knife I hid under a trash can. When I returned, there was a seat for me right in front of my brother. I sat down, apologized, and started to listen to the conversations. Yet as soon as this guy has the chance to talk to me directly, he says, "Have I met you before? I have this strange feeling that we know each other, but I can't place it." I was blown away. We both were. This was the first conversation we had, and we both believed we had known each other personally. But when he explained his life back in America, I couldn't think of any reasonable explanation as to where we met, and even if we did, the feeling was that of close friends, not of I shook hands with you once. Story 11. I was driving home from another state on the interstate, about an hour from home. I was in the right lane when someone cut me off, forcing me to go into the middle lane. Now there's a car in the left lane, Mr. Scissors in the right lane, and the car in front of me in the middle. Lane slams on their brakes as I'm merging into the lane. For some reason, instead of doing anything else, I just close my eyes to brace for impact. Never have done this before or since. Still don't know why I did. But nothing happens and I open my eyes after about 2 seconds. Somehow, I'm on the highway going to my house, which is about 10 minutes away from my house, and there were no cars around at all, as far as I could see in front or behind me. Somehow, I moved through time or space to avoid a collision, and I still have no idea what happened to this day. Story 12. I was given a potato in school. Cannot for the life of me remember why. And I was having a weirdly good time playing with it. I went into my room and started throwing it up in the air and catching it, but one time I threw it up, it just seemed to inexplicably curve backwards over my head. I heard it thump on the ground, but when I turned around to pick it up, it was gone. I spent 10 minutes looking everywhere for it, and it just wasn't there. When we moved house a year later and I was emptying my room, I fully expected to find a gross, rotting potato somewhere, but still, it was nowhere to be found. I asked my parents and even my sister if they'd found and got rid of a potato in my room. Nobody had any idea about it. I'm gonna spend the rest of my life wondering where the hell that potato went. Story 13. I was at a friend's house in high school. He was gone to some family event, and I was there alone chilling till he got back. While he was gone, I heard footsteps in other rooms, things falling over, doors opening and closing. I freaked the hell out and locked myself in one room. The footsteps came up right outside the door of the room I was in and just stopped. The room I was in had 2 windows, opposite sides of the room, curtains on each. A few minutes after the footsteps stopped outside my door, there was a very loud bang on both windows at the same time, and the curtains on both windows, opposite sides of the room, remember, flew straight out. I'm talking at an almost perfect 90-degree angle from the wall, as straight as a sheet of paper. I called my friend thinking he was messing with me. He wasn't. I could hear his family in the background. I've gone through every possibility I can think of. I thought maybe an intruder, but no, his house is so small, I would have heard forced entry from anywhere in the house. The footsteps wouldn't make sense. They would stop in one place and then be heard again in a completely different part of the house. Nothing explains the curtain thing. They had no central AC, so no air movement to account for that blowback, and nothing can account for the simultaneous bangs on both windows. Hez told me over and over he believes his house is haunted. I've never believed in ghosts, but I questioned my beliefs that night. Story 14. My husband and I were once on a MAX train in Portland when some stoners got on and sat across from us. They were all loudly bored and hungry, and one of them was scrounging around under the seats. As we watched, he pulled a McDonald's bag out from under the seat a few sections behind him. That bag was full of food. He began distributing burgers to his stoner buddies, until the last guy said, "No thanks, I don't like burgers." Then the guy reaches into the bag and says, "That's okay, here's a chicken sandwich," and he hands his buddy the last item. The bag had exactly enough for them to each have a sandwich, and adequately fed the guy who doesn't eat burgers. I still think about it. Story 15. My girlfriend's cousin suddenly disappeared one day after she'd taken the bus to her university to change something around with her courses. She's a huge homebody and has been through some trauma in the past, so it was extremely unlike her to up and leave with no warning. All of the immediate family searched for her, including myself, for 2 days. We even got the police involved. Absolutely no sign of her. Her mom was able to get a hold of her cell signal and it placed her in a city about 40 minutes over, so we searched frantically there and again, nothing. A day after this, while my girlfriend's parents are out, they just find her walking down the road by herself. They take her in. I'm guessing she was on her way home because it was about a 20-minute walk from her house, but she just can't give an explanation for why she disappeared or who she'd been with. She can't remember anything. I'm assuming there was some sort of trauma involved because her brain completely wiped it out, but we actually have no idea why she went missing and what happened, just that she turned up 3 days later on the side of the road. Story 16. I went to visit my mom's house to say goodbye to my dog before my mom was going to take him to get put to sleep since he was really sick. I didn't want that to happen yet, so I was arguing with her about it for a while. At one point, my dog wanders off and I don't see him for a while. I couldn't find him, figured he was out chilling in the horse pasture as he was wont to do. It was dark and he wasn't coming when I called. I just thought he was doing his thing. I was sad I couldn't say one last goodbye, but I had to get going. I walked to the front of the house where I was parked, and the little jerk was in my car, sitting in the driver's seat looking at me with that stupid look he always got on his face when it was time for a car ride. I started crying right then, am crying right now. My windows were all the way up, my doors were locked, I had the only key. To this day, I have no earthly idea how the hell he got in there. Story 17. I like to think I created one of these for my neighbors. We both have indoor or outdoor cats that come and go through doggy doors. One day, I came home from work and noticed there had been a tussle in my living room and a cat collar had been left behind. Checked my security cam and saw that it was the neighbor cat that had come in. I threw the collar in my junk drawer, planning to give it back the next time I saw them, and then promptly forgot about it. For about a year. I was working outside and the neighbor cat came by to say hi, and I remembered the collar. I ran inside and popped it back on the cat. I would have loved to see the reaction the day it showed back up with its collar. Story 18. Another personal mystery. On a snowy night out at the bar, a friend decides he'd had enough and left to walk home. It was a short trip home through a small residential neighborhood. His girlfriend called an hour later as he hadn't come back home yet. Afraid that something had happened, we drove around looking for him, and we found him wandering in the middle of the street without his jacket. It was cold, so it was lucky that we found him quickly, because he was also incredibly drunk, which he had been 2 hours before. We didn't find his jacket and wallet. The next week, someone called him saying that he'd forgotten his jacket and wallet at a party the night before. A week after his stuff had been lost. He didn't know the people who had held the party and had no recollection of going there, but it was close to where we found him. The thing is, they hadn't had a party the night he lost his stuff, only the following weekend. So did he time travel a week into the future, got drunk and lost his stuff, and then returned? We never found an explanation. Story 19. I had a wristwatch that my dad bought me back in the 90s. It was one of those kinetic watches that would wind itself when you walk, etc. Anyway, for some reason it kept stopping at around 1:30 am, never 1:30 in the afternoon. Sometimes it would keep going, but 3 times out of 5 it would stop at the exact time, and we sent it to the swatch company to get repaired, and a month or 2 later we got a catalog of watches with a handwritten note, basically saying, "We don't know what the hell is wrong with your watch. We're stumped. Pick a watch out of this catalog and have it as a replacement." So that's my obsession. Story 20. My mom inherited a watch from her grandmother. It was the old-fashioned kind that needed to be wound all the time, obviously. Anyway, one day it went missing, and despite turning the house upside down, she couldn't find it anywhere. In the end, she just accepted it had gone. Cut to a few years later and we had moved house. We'd been in the new place for about 6 months, and one night she woke up and turned the light on, and the watch was sitting on her bedside table, wound and showing the correct time. She totally believes in ghosts and is confident her grandmother found it and brought it back to her. Story 21. I grew up in an extremely rural place, so this may have something to do with it. One morning, when I was getting up to go to high school, I was driving out of the driveway on the embankment between the road and the driveway. It was the side of a mountain, so imagine sort of a small cliff. There was a giant bird of prey sitting there, just sort of chilling. I mean, this thing was maybe 6 feet tall, kind of had the general shape of an owl. And when I went past it, it flew off, and its wingspan was bigger than the length of my truck. It was super cool to see, but freaked me out a little. I've never been able to figure out what this thing was, and it's a little freaky thinking. There's basically a dinosaur that lives somewhere near my mom's backyard. Never saw it again. My family is Native American, and by my best guess, when I told Grandma, she said I saw Thunderbird, and to my best knowledge of both biology and stories, she's right. Story 22. There's gotta be a reasonable explanation for the disappearance of Brian Schaffer. He was the medical student that walked back into a Columbus bar just before closing and was never seen again. Only one entrance patrons and staff used to enter and exit, and one emergency exit. Both have surveillance cameras. Lots more info here and a great video rundown here. There was a dark construction site underneath the bar that led to the aforementioned emergency exit backside of the building, which had a CCTV camera pointing at it. Bloodhounds couldn't place him anywhere, and he's not seen on any CCTV footage around Columbus or Ohio State University. He was supposed to go on vacation with his significant other days after he disappeared. I don't buy that he disappeared on his own accord. This case still baffles Columbus police, and I don't know if we'll ever find out what happened just after the Ugly Tuna Saloon closed on that fateful night. Story 23, I was in high school waiting for my bus to pull up, and I was kind of just zoned out. There were kids talking, and I was just kind of absorbing the noise from it all. There was a group of kids talking close to me, and I heard one of them say that they didn't understand something about a game that I was familiar with. So I kind of butt in and answered the question. Him and his buddy were Asian, and they're just kind of staring at me in disbelief. So I apologized because I felt like I had been kind of rude. The one who had been talking said that it was fine, but he didn't expect me to understand Korean. He and his friend were foreign exchange students from South Korea, and at that moment he had been speaking in his native language. I heard him as if he had spoken plain English, and when he did speak in English, it wasn't as plain as what I had heard. I still have no idea how I understood him in that brief moment. Story 24. This happened a few years ago to my brother and my mom. It was a parent-teacher conference at my brother's high school, literally the largest high school in the US with about 6,000 students, and after waiting forever to finally meet with the teacher, they walked in and sat down. The teacher then says that our father was just in there, right before them, and my mom was shocked and told him that there was no way. The teacher insisted that he just walk out and give his name and a perfect description of my father. A very tall man with a lot of freckles, brown hair, and a thick mustache, and summarize their meeting. My mom then informs him that my father has been dead for over 10 years and is in disbelief. The teacher had absolutely no background of our family and no way of knowing this shocked himself. To this day, we have no idea what happened that day. Story 25. When I was a little child, we went on a holiday trip to Barbados, along with another couple, friends of my parents. In the resort was an old black gardener who'd always wear a yellow rain jacket. Apparently, he had an interesting face, so my father asked if he could take a picture. The man said yes, but I'm telling you, I can't be captured in a photo. My dad didn't believe him, but got his friend to take a picture with his camera as well. He pretty much forgot about this incident, even when some of the holiday pictures turned out just gray. Late 70s, they had to be developed. The friends of my parents lived in another city, different labs and all. Still, they also had some great pictures, but there was none of the old black man. Story 26. I was on the porch with my dad looking at the forest at night. We were talking when we see a ball of light in the forest, pure white. It stayed like that just long enough for us to point, and it starts expanding towards us, quickly but slowly enough. We had a second before the whole area was in almost daylight, like picture Harry Potter's Patronus from the third movie, and then all returned to night, no more than 10 to 15 seconds max. This was very rural, so it couldn't have been a plane or anything, or other people as we would have seen them. Some people have said ball lightning in the past, but if it were, then it took up an area at least a couple hundred meters in diameter. Story 27. A personal mystery of mine. My uncle's best friend or coworker just disappeared one day. Uncle came to his job site one day, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and his coworker never showed up. Uncle went to his house. I might add that the coworker lived in a neighborhood of houses that belonged to DWP that were given to the workers there. When he arrived, he found his truck parked outside with the door and tailgate open, keys in ignition with uncashed checks on the dashboard and a gun in the passenger seat. He went over to the house and found the garage door open and the front door unlocked. My uncle went in and found his place was filled with junk, along with more guns, more uncashed checks, and a full uneaten meal. Uncle searched all around the house, which was up against a hill, and searched the surrounding area and work site, then locked everything and went to his boss, who couldn't have cared less about the matter. Uncles ended up having to call the police himself, but since the coworker didn't have any immediate family who cared about him. The police didn't bother doing an extensive search. Story 28. I was cooking in my small studio apt last year and went to grab my colander from the only place in my kitchen I ever kept it. It was not there. No big deal. Eating the meal I had just cooked, I started thinking about it. Where the hell could it be? My house is not big, and there's only one place it should ever be. Then I tried to justify that perhaps it was at my mom's house. At last, I can relax. Next day, I asked Mom about it, as she has the bigger identical calendar. Came in a set. Yep, she has hers. So where the hell is mine? That afternoon, I tore my place apart, searching for this, but to no avail. I have moved on now, but still I wonder what happened to the missing calendar. Story 29. Suspected spontaneous human combustion. Not an expert or anything, but from memory. People vanish. Police are asked to search the home. Find a charred corpse on a chair. The chair is damaged but intact. Everything else is fine, just the burnt remains. Forensics come in, and sure enough, no accelerants or foul play. This has happened a few recorded times, but nobody knows the cause, trigger, or anything other than the final result. If not spontaneous human combustion, then could be someone sleeping in front of the fire, and their clothes heat up till they catch fire. But then why didn't the fire spread like a normal fire? Why didn't the person wake up when they felt their legs on fire? Story 30. Actually, just recently, something really odd happened to me. I have a good friend, let's call her Jill. Jill and I have known each other for 20 years, since childhood. Our families know each other. She was over at my place, I was over at hers, etc. So I know her pretty well. I even know about her friends I have never met, but that she's talked about, etc. So 2 months ago, Jill told me her brother is getting married. And I know her brothers. She has two, let's call them Jim and Tom. Jim is the oldest, so I said congrats who Jim is getting married to. She's like, it's not Jim. Now Tom is too young, around 13, so I was super confused. And she's like, it's, let's call him John. I was like, since when does she have another brother? I laughed rather awkwardly and said how old John is again. She said he's 21. I have never heard of him before though. But I thought, wow, I'm such a dense idiot, it must be my memory playing a trick or something. Story 31. My grandmother lives in an old farm outside of a small town named Fort Ashby in West Virginia's Panhandle. She's 84, but her mind is just as sharp as it was 60 years ago. Being home all the time, she's able to recognize the neighbors' vehicles and is very aware of things happening on and around her property. One day, a few summers ago, she looked out her window towards her son's house and saw flames and smoke coming off of his house. He happened to be home that day, so she called him immediately and asked, "Do you know your house is on fire?" Confused, he ran outside and found no trace of the blaze she'd reported. When this sort of oddity is reported by an elderly person, and it turns out to be false, you start to worry about their minds. Neither of them had called authorities, so they were baffled when, 10 minutes later, first responders arrived along with the local sheriff. They were responding based on the reports of 2 other 911 calls from passers-by and neighbors. They also found no trace of a fire. There have been a number of other spooky things happening on her property over the years, but this remains the strangest and the most unsolved mystery. Story 32. This is a personal mystery that happened to my roommate and I in college. There were 3 of us living in an apartment together. My best friend, myself, and another dude that needed a place. Pretty cool guy at the time. After winter semester, my best friend had to go back home to take care of his dad, since his dad had recently become disabled and couldn't watch one of the autistic brothers anymore. He would occasionally come back to our apartment and we would go out and party and stuff. One day, hanging out in my roommate's room, his room is directly next to my best friend's old room, we heard my best friend's ringtone go off. Mind you, we just woke up from a nap and it was around 1 a.m. I looked towards the room and then to my roommate and asked, is he sleeping in the room? And my roommate had no idea. We both opened the door to see it completely dark and devoid of any life. We were really spooked by that. Of course, I called my best friend immediately afterwards and he picked up. It cleared some things up, but we never found out what that was or where it came from. Story 33. I don't know if this counts, but one night I was hanging out with a woman named after an animal. We will say chicken. I'm at a bar with her. She's someone I've been hooking up with, but not really dating. Anyways, for complicated reasons, she gets upset. I go to the bathroom. While I'm peeing, I check my phone and see that a friend has texted me that they were driving that night and sadly drove over a bunch of chickens. I then check my email, and here's where it gets weird. My mom, who very rarely emailed me, had sent me a photo for no reason of a woman holding a very large chicken. And my mom is asking me, isn't this huge chicken crazy? And my mom had never met a chicken or heard me speak of her. Anyways, I go back out, and chicken is wasted and rude and basically tells me to F off. So I called up another friend and went over to her place. And we start drinking, and then I look around her apartment and see all these little license plates, which it turns out are for her motorcycle. And she explains that she used to be in a bike group, and that everyone had a biker name. Her name? Chicken. I am still sure that the universe was trying to say something to me that night. Story 34. This confuses me to this day and kind of scared me. My ex-girlfriend came home one day with a cool new wallet. I asked her when she got it because I'd never seen it before. She goes on to say it's not new, this is a wallet I lost like 3 years ago. Earlier that day, she got a ride home from work from one of her regular friends. There were a couple other people riding with them, and it was a truck, so a couple of them sat in the bed of the truck. She sits down and recognizes her old wallet, thinking no way it's the same one. It opens and finds her old ID in it, along with some receipts from Zumiez. She asks the guy driving if he knows anything about it and has no idea. The wallet had been missing for 3 years and was in perfect condition. ID and receipts look brand new but dated from years ago, found in the back of a stranger's truck. Story 35. Personal mystery. I lived in northern Japan for a couple years over a decade ago. I had a long-distance phone plan connected to my landline. It required entering a code, a sequence of about 20 numbers. When I got my bill, I noticed that it listed several calls to a phone number I didn't know, but to my hometown, that would have taken place in the middle of the night. I couldn't remember any night I was on the phone at the times noted in the bill, and I asked my mom, who worked for a large phone company, to see who the number belonged to. It belonged to the office of my creepy childhood pediatrician. I don't know his number and would have been unable to look it up as I didn't have access to the internet at my place. I'm sure I've never called the number in my life. If I did make the call, I would have woken up with so many numbers, which I have no history of sleepwalking, etc. Some of the calls were over 20 minutes and some were shorter. If the long-distance company made a mistake, how did the mistake include a number not just to my country, but to my hometown? And not just my hometown, but my creepy pediatrician?